I didn't say a word when Karen banged on my front door, waving a bright orange eviction notice she had printed herself. I just looked at her over my coffee mug, let her finish her little speech about community compliance, and then handed her the county property deed with one line highlighted. This parcel is exempt from all association governance. Her voice cracked mid-sentence. That was the last time she ever set foot on my porch. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When I first moved into Maplewood Estates, I wasn't looking for a fight. I'd spent 20 years in the military, and the last thing I wanted after retiring was more bureaucracy or control. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Tree-lined streets, tidy lawns, a small lake at the end of the road where kids fished on weekends. My house sat on the outer edge of the development, just outside the newer phase, the HOA control. I liked that detail. I could still have neighbors, but I wouldn't be part of anyone's little kingdom. I just wanted to fix up the place, grow tomatoes in peace, and sleep without alarms. The first few months were blissfully quiet. I painted the shutters, rebuilt the back deck, and met a few nice folks who stopped by to say hello. Most were friendly, but there was one who wasn't Karen. She was the self-appointed president of the Maplewood Homeowners Association. You could tell by the way she carried a clipboard like it was a weapon. She didn't live near me. Her house was 3 streets over, square in the middle of her face. But that didn't stop her from trying to run everything like a miniature government. She reminded me of a second lieutenant, with too much authority and no field experience. The first incident came in early spring. You got a letter, not from the county, not from my mortgage lender, but from the HOA, a formal violation notice. Apparently, my driveway gravel was non-compliant with neighborhood standards. I remember laughing out loud. My property wasn't even within their jurisdiction. I tossed it in the trash and went about my day. 2 weeks later, another letter came, this one thicker, a second notice, and a fine $150. It was addressed to resident, Maplewood Estates, Block C. That was the HOAS zone. I lived in Block B, the unincorporated section. So I called the number at the bottom. Karen answered. When I told her my address, there was a pause. Then she said, "We're working to bring all properties under association coverage. It's mandatory for neighborhood integrity." I told her, politely, that she had the wrong person and the wrong property. Her response, "We'll see about that." That's when the letters turned into harassment. HOA inspectors started walking my property line with measuring tapes. One of them took pictures of my backyard garden from the sidewalk. A week later, someone dumped a notice of known compliance right on my windshield while I was at the grocery store. Karen even cornered one of my neighbors, asking if I'd been cooperative. I hadn't realized how much these people enjoyed control until I saw it firsthand. At first, I tried diplomacy. I sent an email to the HOAS legal contact, attaching my property deed, the original county plat map, and the zoning document clearly showing my parcel's exemption. I didn't threaten. I simply wrote, "Please remove my address from your correspondence." No reply. Instead, I received a community hearing notice. They'd scheduled a meeting about me. The agenda said, non-compliant homeowner violating HOA standards and refusing membership. It was absurd. I wasn't even part of their association. That night, something in me shifted. I was angry. I'd dealt with worse personalities overseas, but I was done playing nice. I stopped sending emails and started building a file. I spent 3 nights combing through county archives. Turns out, the original development had been built in 2 stages. My street, Birchwood Lane, was the first constructed 10 years before the HOA was even formed. When the developer sold off the second phase, the HOA charter explicitly stated it applied only to all lots in Section C and future phases under Maplewood Estates Association. Section B, mine, was never annexed. I printed everything: deeds, plats, recorded charters, even Karen's welcome brochure. I also found something else. Karen had been filing extension petitions with the county, trying to annex non-member lots into the HOA without homeowner consent. Illegal. She'd even used HOA funds to pay a surveyor to redraw lot boundaries on paper only, to make it look like my property fell under her control. By then, she'd sent me another eviction warning. Imagine the nerve. A woman with no legal authority trying to evict a homeowner from his own property. That was the last straw. The next HOA board meeting was open to the public, so I showed up early. Karen looked surprised to see me, like a teacher catching a student in the staff lounge. I sat quietly in the back, folder in hand, while she began the meeting with her usual tone of superiority. When she reached agenda item 3, non-compliant property on Birchwood Lane, I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed my folder on the table in front of her and said, "Before you continue, you might want to read the county charter." Then I handed copies to every board member, plus one to their lawyer, a nervous-looking man who clearly hadn't signed up for this level of drama. They read in silence. The room got heavy. Karen's face turned pale. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and said quietly, "This property is outside our jurisdiction. This entire action is invalid." You could have heard a pin drop. I didn't gloat. I just picked up my folder, thanked them for their time, and left. The next morning, the violation signs disappeared from my yard. A week later, I got an email from a different board member. An apology. Tin Lee. Bail had asked clarification. Karen, I learned, had voluntarily stepped down from her position. That's HOA Code 4 was forced out before the lawsuit hit. Apparently, the county launched a small investigation after my file made its way to the property registrar's office. Karen's annexation attempts violated local land use regulations. The HOA had to reimburse every non-member they'd tried to fine over the last 5 years. Their operating budget, gone. Half the board resigned. Now, when I drive through Maplewood, the remaining board members wave politely from their driveways. Some even pretend not to see me, which is fine. The silence is worth more than their approval T-best part. A few months later, my next-door neighbor, who was under the HOA, invited me over for coffee. She whispered, "I wish I'd never joined." "You did the right thing." I told her the truth. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just refused to be bullied by paperwork and power trips. Sometimes, the most effective revenge isn't loud. It's simply showing people the law they thought you'd never read. Now my garden is thriving. My deck's finally stained the way I like it, and my driveway gravel still exactly the same color that started this whole thing. No more letters, no more meetings, just peace. When I sit outside in the evening and hear the wind through the trees, I think about that day. Karen's hand shaking as she realized she'd lost control, and I smile. Because for once, the quiet isn't enforced by rules. It's earned.